welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's only daily television platform for MSME entrepreneurs. We bring you the best information as well as the biggest experts to empower you. Tonight on the show, we're featuring two small giants. First up, we have UrbanClap, and on the other side of a small break, we'll feature Maker's Asylum. Home services providers that have a digital platform connecting those in the informal space, including carpenters, electricians, etc., are becoming a buzzword, and a giant in the space is UrbanClap, which has, of course, a first mover advantage. Karishma Vanjani caught up with this company to understand how they are making each of these workers a micro entrepreneur. Take a listen.
Late work hours, back-to-back meetings, crazy deadlines. Do you need a break? Date night, frizzy hair, but there's no time for salon appointments? Are you keen to lose weight, but there's no time to hit the gym?
हाँ, तुम्हारा फोन आया था?
Some electricity issue.
अरे यार,
इतना काम है, कैसे होगा? फेशियल, वैक्सिंग।
मेरा एसी खराब हो गया, कूलिंग नहीं कर रहा है, प्लीज किसी को भेज दो।
The fast-growing home services industry is here to serve these needs and more. A sector where technology meets local labor, be it carpentry, electronic repairing, or beauty therapists, is the next big thing to watch out for. And tonight, we meet the giant in the home services industry, UrbanClap.
Raghav, thanks for joining us on Leaders of Tomorrow. Let's start by talking about the online services marketplace. It was non-existent few years back, but now we see thousands of customers being catered through this market. Talk to our viewers on how did you capture the explosion in this market?
Services has always been there. It plays a large part in any economy's GDP. There was a time where you'd order your plumber or book your plumber by asking your guard, who would connect you to a plumber who'd show up at his own time with his own delivery estimates, right? And it was only a matter of time before tech would have come in and solved it. So when we started off about three and a half years ago, our goal was really to enter and establish commerce for services. How can we actually transact on services? To be beautician or appliance repair or wedding photographers or events in general. We've really gone and structured and defined the service and scaled through a lot of use of technology. And that's what's really contributed to the scale we've come at. I do think this is just 1%. There are miles to go. But yeah.
Okay, so UrbanClap launched 3 years back, but now you guys have presence in 8 cities. 8 metro cities. I want to understand, why is there no presence in the tier 2 or tier 3 cities?
Well, ideally, I'd love if we were in all cities. That would be really disruptive and something to talk about. We've not actually yet launched in the tier 2 cities, so-called tier 2 cities. And fundamentally, that's because the economics behave a little differently. It's a question of scale. So when you especially talk about marketplaces, it's a question of the scale of the city. And not just the population. Since we are internet marketplaces, what's the activated internet group? How many people would actually purchase things online? I think these things start mattering. So it's for us also, it's a matter of time. I think those cities need to evolve and our business needs to be deep enough to actually percolate into tier 2. And once that engine is working really well, expanding. But yeah, we on a yearly basis, we'll pick and choose 1 or 2 cities and we'll enter. And that's how the 8 cities have been born.
Okay, so you're talking about disruption. Let me talk about GST. How did GST impact your business?
GST impacted our business. Well, when it launched, obviously it took some time internally for the teams to prepare and for payment systems to change. But yeah, we've actually worked very closely with the government in coming up with what and how should the right policies and the rates be framed. We'd rather have this, but have it in a well-structured form.
Let me wind the clock back a little and go to demonetization. What was the impact on the business post demonetization as more and more consumers jumped onto the digital bandwagon?
It did. We probably did see a little upward curve in terms of online payments. I think that was more a time-sensitive thing. We generally put in a lot of effort to have online payments because it's more structured and more trackable generally for us. So those efforts have carried on.
So what's the gross margin that the startup has kept for, let's say, any service?
Or it can range from, say, 1% to 30%. It really depends on what's the value add to the professional's life we bring.
UrbanClap is trying to pioneer the beauty segment. What made you move in that direction? What opportunities did you see in that market?
So taking a step back, when we started off about 2 years ago, when we got a sense of the pace and the scale, our core target audience actually happens to be a 25 to 35-year-old working woman, right? The strongest TG we have, right? And in that playbook, beauty actually plays a big component. It's a service which actually repeats more or less every 30 days, 45 days, right? It has a lot of scope. There's no reason why someone should go out of their homes when you can bring the beautician into their homes, right? So in the service spectrum, that's one of the stronger verticals to actually value add.
UrbanClap is a fairly young company, which is 3.5 years into the market. What has a year-on-year growth been like?
It's a tough number to share, but what I could tell is, so we are typically now growing on at least a 3x trajectory year on year, right? We on a monthly basis, we are doing about 300,000 requests or orders in a month. But the prime objective is, hey, the professionals we're working with, the partners we're working with, are they happy? Have they become micro-entrepreneurs? That's the disruption.
How do you ensure the strata of individuals joining UrbanClap are trained well? How do you ensure that they match up to the quality that you're promising to your consumers?
We are very stringent, we are very strict with our quality check, and it almost happens in two parts, right? There's a quality check which is pre-vetting, someone coming on board. We actually go through their profiles. It's not just profiles in this case, right? It's the qualifications they've had, their work history. For cases like beauticians, that actually get interviewed versus, say, a photography or a yoga instructor, where we look at their certificates and get references. So there's a lot of strict checking happening. We do actually do training, right? We've realized some time back that we would need to actually elevate the current standards, establish a standardized way of putting that experience. So we do actually have trainings, we have regular audits with our beauticians. We keep taking feedback from customers, which all happens in one consolidated, automated fashion, right? Which all, it's basically a feedback cycle, right? It's giving them a 360-degree view of how they can improve, helping them improve with us so that they also scale. Yeah, and we have a high bar, so we would not allow beauticians beyond or under a certain level of review to, for example, function.
So UrbanClap is turning its local servicemen and women into micro-entrepreneurs, and government with its Skill India mission is trying to do the very same thing. So have you had any partnership with the government?
Excellent. That statement makes perfect sense, because what we see ourselves doing is taking these service professionals and making them independent, which is micro-entrepreneurs. Yes, the government has a lot of good initiatives, and we actually have partnered with the government on multiple of these initiatives where they have their own training programs. And we'd work with them to further select and actually take them into the actual workforce, because the training and education and certification is at one place, but the end goal is actually them having a decent livelihood, right? And them being self-sufficient and being able to earn. So we take that baton from them at that point, further train them and take them out live.
Let's talk about funding with Series C on your plate. How do you ensure that you have the right burn rate?
We've been actually very, very careful with generally how we've gone about spending our funds. We actually had a flat cost for about a year and a half. And in that meantime, we've still grown a lot, right? We've grown over 3x, 4x year on year. And the way we've done that is actually going deeper into the category experience. So, that's how we add more value, hence we get more revenues, hence providers make more. Right? And that's generally been the magic behind our scale. We are a very, very frugal company. That's something which we keep telling the team. Treat this money as not yours. You're not, the most profitable company out there. We are still young. We have a long way to go. And that's how the teams operate.
So let me close down this interview and talk about your future plans. What is UrbanClap's key focus area in the next 5 to 10 years? Is UrbanClap going to focus on revenue growth or scaling up? Do you plan to go to tier 2, tier 3 cities?
I wish I could pick one, but I think it's going to be everything. For us, we have a good amount of funds back in our banks, but the idea is to actually add more value, go deeper into the categories we play in, Beauty was a great vertical. We really optimized and went deep into. Last year we were going deep with appliance repair and so on and so forth. We figured out more organic and healthier ways to grow and really fight that battle.
After quitting my dental practice, there was this trouble that I was facing of the financial things, but nothing really helped. I also gave out pamphlets in the newspaper, but no response as such.
काम कम मिलने के कारण मेरे माँ बाप भी थोड़ा दुखी होते थे, तो उन्होंने फिर मेरे को घर से अलग कर दिया था। मैं ठान लिया मन में, मैंने कहा कुछ करना है बच्चों के लिए।
My parents made me an engineer, but my passion was in teaching. Therefore, I switched.
When I registered with UrbanClap, it was a matter of days that I started getting leads, and more or less you can say the majority of the students that I'm getting is from UrbanClap, even now, right now.
आज मेरे पास इतना काम है कि मेरी वजह से मेरे 40 वर्कर का चूल्हा जल रहा है।
And for the last 25 years after retiring, I've been teaching.
For the urban poor and a chance for the consumers to enjoy professional services in the comfort of their homes, the home services industry is profiting from the growing demand for domestic services.
It's time for a break. On the other side, we'll feature Makers Asylum and tell you what they are doing. Just stay tuned. Welcome back. With us here on Leaders of Tomorrow, and tonight on Small Giants, we're featuring Makers Asylum. Makerspace or hackerspace is quite the norm abroad, but Indians are newbies when it comes to collaborative community workspaces. Attempting to change that is Makers Asylum, and Shubangi sinha caught up with this company to understand how they help those who have an idea take that to fruition. Take a look.
India, to my mind, is most popular for three things: the Taj Mahal, spices and the famous Indian jugaad. Today we are here at the mecca of jugaad at Mumbai, the Makers Asylum. I have with me Vaibhav. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm here to sort of understand what you really do at the Makers Asylum. It's an extremely interesting concept, so why don't you run me through it?
Why don't I show you how to cut some metal and get you a little bit into the hands-on experience of it, and then we can talk a little bit more about it.
Oh, that sounds great. I just wish I was dressed a little better, but why not? Always love a great challenge. Let's just do this. Come on.
Jugaad in India is omnipresent, and ensuring that every curious creative mind has a no-holds-barred workspace to turn their ideas into tangible projects is Mumbai-based Makers Asylum. Familiarizing India with the concept of maker spaces, mechanical engineer Vaibhav Chhabra is bringing to the fore the latent power of collaborative spaces.
So Vaibhav, thank you so much for speaking with us today. Let us start by talking to you about what really was the inspiration and what were the proverbial building blocks of this company. The name is extremely interesting, Makers Asylum. How did you really come up with it?
So Makers Asylum started about 4 years back. I'm a mechanical engineer and a photographer. I was studying in Boston, and right after that, when I was working for a company over there called iNetra, we used to do a lot of tinkering and making, and most of that work used to happen at various maker spaces within the Boston area. One of my favorite spaces over there was Artisans Asylum, which is like this gigantic maker space, about the size of 2 cricket grounds.
Wow,
that big. Yeah. And within that we had like all sorts of different equipment and a lot of very interesting artists, engineers who would come there and be building exciting things. And I used to personally love going there every day after work and actually making and learning a lot of things apart from my own work, which was like carpentry or welding or making robots and things like that.
Right, so I think it is safe for me to say that the makers movement and this concept of a maker space is much more popular abroad, whether it's in North America or Europe. What do you really think are the few things which are holding back this concept from becoming popular back home, back in India? Do you think that it is spaces like a Maker's Asylum which will perhaps bring the change?
I think the making culture as it is very, very popular in India. Jugaad is like, and making is pretty much everywhere through the streets of India. And just recently, I got reminded of all of this when I was traveling across the country and doing a road trip. And we're makers and we love making. And I think there's no two ways about that. It's just about reaching to the people and saying that let's work together. And that's the only difference that there was in the maker culture outside, which is that over there as well, the maker movement was very widespread in the sense people were making in their garages, people were making outside. And then the maker movement just allowed them to come together and work in specific spaces and connect them together. In India, on the other hand, same thing. We're doing the same stuff. There are so many garages everywhere. People are working on different things. Why is it not at that scale yet in India? Because one, we started very soon. We're only about 4 years old. And I guess all the maker spaces in India are within the 3 to 4 years age bracket. They're not that old yet. And the awareness is increasing. A lot of people are talking about it, which is nice. And it's nice to see that every day we have about 5 to 10 visitors coming into the space to explore and understand what the space is about. Because when we go and talk outside or when they see on social media and stuff, they get an idea of what's happening and cool things are happening, but they don't really understand that they can come themselves and possibly use the tools over here.
Now, like you're saying, the concept of a maker space is relatively new to the country and it's just about 4 to 5 years old. But there are a few spaces which are cropping up across the country which happen to mostly be in metro cities. Now, my contention here is that a lot of jugaad is actually happening in the rural parts of the country, in the smaller towns of this country. Don't you think that a concept like a Maker's Asylum or a concept of a maker space in fact would work extremely well in a tier 2 or a tier 3 town?
Yeah, so actually we're setting up as we speak a space in Jaipur to start with, and the lab over there is going to be focused on textiles. And the idea is to get people in Jaipur excited about working and trying new things with textiles and handicraft and be able to use that space and take it further. And we're building that, so hopefully in the next couple of months it should be up and ready.
Now, I want to pick up on your point of running this space on a membership model. I don't think it's extremely easy to do that because a lot of people drop out eventually and it's a constant battle to keep their interest in what you're offering to them, and the pilferage rates are of course very high. So how do you really think that this model has worked out for you, and what are the things that you've done to be able to keep your customers engaged?
So I completely agree with you. The membership model, it doesn't really work. Eventually people dwindle down. Every month you have to constantly get back the people once again. And it has been a challenge for us as well. But at the same time, we have a few companies over here who've been stationed over here since the past 2 years. So for example, Quidditch or Zua or Playtm, these are actually sort of hardware startups of their own. And because they've been stationed here, their entire teams are working here for a long period of time. That's been giving us a consistent source of memberships. But the other ways that we sustain is through workshops. So we do a lot of training over here. So at the Maker's Asylum, we have trainings from tool trainings to slightly advanced courses on anything from carpentry to 3D printing. And then we do various longer programs like the rapid prototyping course that takes you through the journey of all the tools and design thinking and learning about how to solve a problem and make a quick solution or make a quick prototype out of the same thing.
So taking your point forward about training, really, I think one of the things that is a problem in the country at this point in time is the employability of people coming out of colleges. A lot of that has been attributed to not enough technical training, not enough skilling. Do you think a maker culture could perhaps change this, could perhaps elevate the skills that people acquire at schools and colleges? Do you think that a training like this at a school level would actually help us solve this problem?
Yes, I definitely feel that is true because of the fact that just recently we started some programs called STEAM School and STEAM Fabricarium. And the entire thought behind those programs is that people from various colleges and institutes come over here along with other individuals who are entrepreneurs or working at various companies, and they learn how to solve problems and learn how to use all the tools to be able to create something in a short amount of time, or be able to solve problems. Because when you're working, most of the times what you end up doing is you have various problems coming to you one after the other, and you need to solve them. And it's at that point, it doesn't matter how much engineering you know, or how much design you know, or how much art you know, but it's about being able to creatively think and come up with a solution, and then be able to implement it, and to be able to come up with something that has an outcome, and to be able to present that. So that entire process, that entire journey is what we're trying to teach people. And another thing that we focus really highly on is the interdisciplinary nature of the people coming in. So for example, for STEAM School, the youngest person who came down was 10 years old, and the oldest was 44. There were pilots in the group, and there were doctors, and there were engineers, and there were designers and artists, all in the same room, 150 of them, working together for finding solutions to the United Nations Sustainability Goals or disabilities. But the point was that when they're here at the space together, the energy and learning from each other, that peer-to-peer learning and working in teams and working towards solving problems, is that learning that I felt that was missing in my education. And I think that alternative or experiential form of education is very important, where you can go to a mentor, ask questions, learn by doing, making mistakes, and figuring things out as you go along.
Vaibhav, it looks like to me that you're being able to organize the Jugaad movement in this country today, but what are your expansion plans looking like? What does Makers Asylum have on its cards for us in the next few years?
So one, we're really focusing more and more towards alternative and experiential education. So project-based learning, I would say, that where people would come and go through various different sorts of courses and programs where they can learn how to build and solve problems and take that forward. Along with that, we have a space here in Mumbai, we have a space in Delhi, and we're setting up a space in Jaipur, like I spoke about earlier.
Great, that sounds great. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you.
Makers Asylum has managed to get our hands dirty and inspired us to make ideas happen, while convincing us that they may just be the company that sets off an organized maker movement in Jugaad-friendly India.
Completely out of time. If you have any feedback for us, or you're a company that thinks that you fit in as a small giant and want to be featured here on the show, here's how you get in touch. leadersoftomorrow@timesgroup.com is our email ID. You can also send us your ideas on Twitter, Sunanda_J or LOT_ET now, or leave those comments for us on our Facebook page, Leaders of Tomorrow on ET Now. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.